Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Empowering Voices. We have a special guest today, Constantina. Constantina helped me a lot at the beginning of my business with her guidance. She's a coach, and she will tell us more about herself and her business and how the quote we have today on my t-shirt, set boundaries, can be applied to what she does today. Welcome, Constantina. Very honored to have you here.
Thank you so much, Mara. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So tell us, how can set boundaries can be applied to what you do today? Because you took a bit of a different direction now with your work.
Yes, so I am currently working as a life and relationship coach, and I support couples who have been together for some time, but whose relationship has been affected by family life or their business. And however, they're keen to find their way back to each other. They're very clear on that. And as we start to work together, we found that one of the things that helps them a lot is to define their individual personal boundaries and their boundaries for their relationship, what it is that they want from each other, what it is that they want from their relationship, and how they want it to work. But also, we find that boundaries are very important when it comes to ourselves as part of our self-care and part of defining the way we want to live our life and how to move forward. You can see it very clearly if we take, for instance, the example of running a business, if you were to kind of connect it a little bit to what you were saying before. Unless we have very clear and set boundaries on how we look after ourselves, we know that our business is affected by the way we perform when we are inside that. Definitely. But it's the same thing with relationships. If we're not looking after ourselves, we see the repercussions in the way we interact with our partner, in the way we think about the relationship, and in the way we find that some obstacles arise because actually we're not looking after ourselves. And one of the things that comes to mind is let's say we feel a little bit insecure because we have not looked after, let's say, our appearance today, and that affects how we connect with our partner.
Yeah,
simplest that can come. Yeah,
I think, and I learned it the hard way, I have to say, how to set boundaries. And it makes total sense what you say. It's like, if you don't start putting boundaries, it's like neglecting yourself, and if you do it, you start having resentment. So what happened, and I mean, with the lockdown, this has been amplified big time, especially with the first lockdown. In my case, we were not used to work under the same roof, me and my husband, and it wasn't easy at the beginning because I felt I ended up everything for the family and for the house. And he kept going with his job. In reality, of course, you have a distorted vision of reality as well when you start not having boundaries at all, because you feel that you are others and not yourself anymore. You lose yourself, and that is not acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, yep, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so go on.
Indeed, you lose yourself, and it's very easy to do that. And you sometimes it feels like you're merging with the other person and your voice is not heard anymore, or it feels that your self-priorities are put to the side. And so it feels like they remain unfulfilled, and you're wondering when the time is going to come when I will be able to experience the things that I want to. Yeah. So yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's I think initially when we start to put boundaries in place, they feel a little bit alien, they feel a little bit awkward. And sometimes they also feel harsh. It's hard to...
Selfish. You feel a bit selfish because you never did it, right? Especially, and with the husband, okay, I mean, the partner for sure, but with kids, in my case, I had to do it with my kids as well. In the first lockdown, I had my kids at home 24 hours. And of course, it was difficult on everyone. But if I didn't do that, I was the hysterical mom all the time. So in reality, it's setting boundaries is for yourself first, but in order to have a cup full of positive feelings and not just frustration, resentment, hate sometimes, and feeling angry all the time. And of course, whoever is around you gets all the negative, right? And you become the hysterical, the tired, the not the nice things you want to hear, for sure.
Yeah.
And
for me, when I think, I was going to say, for me, when I think of boundaries, I think of Brené Brown. I think she wrote about them quite a lot, and she was explaining them in such a way that
technical problems, Constantina.
Boundaries, and the way she defines them, she talks about how difficult it can feel for some people to set, for instance, a boundary, because they feel that their connection is lost, like you're disconnecting from the person that you set in the boundary, and that can feel a bit harsh. But she talks about how that disconnection can be momentary, but soon after that you kind of reestablish the connection with the person. And also she talks about how much how much better it is to choose the discomfort of setting the boundary as opposed to the resentment of not having that.
Yeah, no, this is definitely, although you understand that after you set the boundaries, that's why we need people like you who are our guidance to tell us, because of course we trust our coach and we give it a try, right? So
sure.
Yeah. Any tip on how to start actually setting boundaries?
It's probably the best way to do it is to start easy, like perhaps starting with boundaries for oneself. So I would, let's say I would go to bed at 9:30 as opposed to midnight. So that can be the first boundary, and sticking to that, or practicing staying with that boundary for as long as possible until it feels comfortable in that sense, as long as possible.
Yeah, that's it seems an obvious thing, right? To set boundaries on ourselves, but we are very harsh on ourselves. We ask too much from ourselves as well. So to learn and set boundaries on us is the first step, definitely. And it's not the easiest, but it's the first, definitely.
Yeah, but because also the more practice we get in setting boundaries, the easier it becomes to set them. And also that initial discomfort that we experience when we first set boundaries with ourselves, of course, and with another person, it starts to dissipate after a while. Like all things that we practice, they get easier and easier. And we start to see that actually it's not as bad as we thought it would be. The other person doesn't necessarily receive them as bad as we thought that would be. So for instance, setting a boundary with a person, it can be starting with setting a boundary with a friend. So actually I've decided to, let's say, work X amount of hours today, and I'm very sorry I won't be able to talk on the phone during those work hours, but I would love to talk to you on the weekend, for instance. So it's a boundary with a bit of renegotiating, the next kind of point of contact. Or with a partner, how could we do it? I mean, there can be so many different scenarios for that, but it can be about, honey, when you wake up in the morning, I would love to not wake up at the same time if you let me snooze. It's sort of reiterating that, and knowing that even though it might feel a bit awkward to say it might feel a little bit awkward to receive it from the partner's point of view, actually it's like Brené talks about that, it's an act of compassion, and it's an act of respect. To set a boundary. It shows that we respect ourselves, we respect the other person. This is why we want them to know what's important to us and what's not. And we respect the relationship. We respect what we share.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also a lot to do with the way we ask and say things. Because when we don't set boundaries and we are the hysterical person, we explode. And instead of say, darling, let me snooze a bit in the morning, we say, yeah, you are terrible. Every morning you are waking me up. and that it's just a break at the start of the day, right? And it's impossible. The boundary is gone already. I mean, we need to be, that's why the habit to create on ourselves to be ready then to communicate to another person.
Yeah,
definitely. We will, I suggest everyone to do it. And also, especially women tend to be the martyr of the situation. So it's more common for a woman not to know how to set boundaries. So definitely we need to do it. And I'd like to ask you if you have a slogan, a motto, an affirmation that supports yourself and your business.
Actually, Brené Brown's quotes comes to mind.
You're a big fan of Brené Brown.
I am
as well, but impossible not to be.
Yeah, I very much respect her work. It's been very helpful in business and life. So she says, have the courage to choose discomfort over resentment. And that was, she said that in an interview she had with, I'm kind of reading it, Chantal Pirat, on why courage, vulnerability, and authenticity have to be practiced.
Mm-hmm. Wow, definitely. So on point, right?
Absolutely.
3-4 words, and they take inside the whole word.
Yeah, because you can apply it to business. Let's say how you set your boundaries and the amount of hours that you work in, or the conditions that you want to work, what sort of behavior you are happy to work with. So some coaches, for instance, they do not want to work with clients that get very angry during a session. It's not conducive to the session, for instance. So a person can draw a boundary that way. So for artists, it can be a boundary in the sense that I'm not open to collaboration, or I'm not open to, I don't know, I'm just making it up right now, right? To commissions, or so that's a boundary. That's a boundary we set.
Yeah, definitely.
And for personal life, of course, it helps one define the things that are important to them and how to communicate them in such a way that they can be received and heard, and if not, and when not, to make the necessary decisions that follow from that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Life is made of decisions, right? We have the choice to decide, and we have to use it, because it's totally useless to stay there and wait that life happens without us. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks a lot for this little and eye-opening chat. It was a real pleasure to have you here. I hope we inspired other people to follow your suggestions. Thanks once again. Bye, everyone. And don't forget, all the contacts for Constantina are in my bio, in the post, and on my website. Bye-bye, and see you next week.
Bye. Thank you for having me, Mara. Thank you so much.